This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Isotope, Native Instruments, Roswell Pro Audio, and Atom Audio. You're hearing my voice right now through the beautiful Roswell Pro Audio Aztec tube microphone, mixed through Isotope, Ozone, RX, and Neutron, all on Atom Audio monitors and headphones. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. Also, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's a great way for you to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
So in Google Chrome, I've got tons of shortcuts. And so one of the things that I like to do is I don't actually name half the bookmarks that are in my bookmarks bar because I know what those icons mean. I know that that's Pinnacle. I know that that's membership.io.
Right.
That's QuickBooks and whatever. So why should I have the name? That means I can fit more on my bookmarks bar. And then I can dedicate more space to things that I actually need to name, which would be different
So
Google Drive folders that I access frequently.
Okay, so this is great. Sorry to interrupt. I get excited. So if I have one that says ChatGPT,
yes,
and it's the logo and then the name, and it's on my bookmarks bar, all I need is the logo. I don't need the name.
Right-click, rename it, and delete that name.
These silly, clever little things. Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Native Instruments introduces the new Complete 15 bundle, featuring Contact 8, offering versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative effects. Perfect for creating everything from emotional scores to dance floor grooves. Contact 8 includes exciting new creative tools like chords and phrases for inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a hybrid instrument blending organic and synth sounds. The Complete 15 bundle also includes updated Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro and AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals and other types of professionals that help us record so you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Shawn Lemon, founder of The Digital Organizer, helping individuals and businesses master their technology. A teacher at heart, Shawn has seen that the biggest reason people struggle with tech is a lack of understanding. I think that's something we can understand in the studio. That's something that's easy to fall into with constantly evolving and changing tools. Another thing we can relate to in the studio. Shawn and I go way back.
Yeah.
We met 10 years ago when I joined my first mastermind group. And every morning, 4 of us would gather together for breakfast to brainstorm and tackle each other's new online business challenges. Since then, I've spent a decade hosting this podcast that you're listening to right now, while Shawn has grown his digital organizer business, allowing him to do things like travel with his family and live a little bit nomadically at times and help clients organize their personal lives and their businesses. So what does this have to do with making records, you might ask? It's a good question. Well, just as we like to focus on creating great records in the studio, Shawn can help us focus on how to organize our document records, streamline studio workflows, and discover new ways to stay organized in our music-making process. I want to give a special thank you to our mutual friend, John Meese, for making our original introduction. Please welcome Shawn Lemon to Recording Studio Rockstars. Shawn, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm ready to rock. Let's go.
Dude, it's great to have you here, man.
It's so good to be here.
It's been a minute since I've seen you. I feel like, we of course were spending a lot of time together many years ago when everything that we're doing now was just seemed like a good idea in the future.
Right.
And then we'd get together and have lunch every once in a while.
Yeah, totally. And really pull on John Meese a lot because he really kind of was the next level for us. Like, okay, how did you do that next? So it was good times.
Well, that's a good example. So Rockstars John is somebody else who started a great online business. And what Shawn's describing is it would have been a situation where it's good to put yourself in a room with people that are better at things than you are. And so
totally.
that, for me, that was, you and John, and we had Richard was with us at
That's
one
right,
point,
yeah.
right? So, and I feel like that's true in the studio too. Of course, you want to surround yourself with people who are really good at making records, which is, of course, why we started this podcast.
Yeah. Totally.
So with that said, as I was mentioning, what are we doing here talking about this when this is a studio podcast? Well, you and I had a conversation again recently, and all of a sudden, like light bulb, I was like, what have you been up to, dude? And you're talking about it all, helping people organize their stuff. And it occurred to me that it would be really cool to just have you on the show where we can kind of deep dive into the stuff that you've learned about staying super organized, with all the digital tools that we use and probably other stuff too, and how we could apply that to ourselves and our studios and making records.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the tools, as you say, are ever changing, but most of us, we bootstrap our businesses. And so we start using these tools, then we find that we need more things and we start adding stuff to the mix, and eventually it gets pretty out of control. And then how do you get it all back? Like, how do you untangle the mess and start working more efficiently when all of a sudden you got away with it before and now you can't?
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. What you're describing just reminds me of the simple process that at some point in your journey, whether it's personal stuff and the first time you're messing with email, or the first time you use a cloud service, or like a Dropbox or a Google Cloud, Google Drive, or the first time you dive into social media, it seems like this vast world where you've just done one or two little things. And so organizing is like not even an issue. You're like, I can remember the last time I used this thing. And then you fast forward 10 years or whatever, 20 years.
Yeah.
How long has it been since, when did Gmail first appear?
It's probably close to 20 years at this point.
Yeah, I remember it was like early 2000s in a band I was working with. It was like, hey, there's this new thing coming. It's called Gmail. I think the G stands for, for some reason we thought G stood for you get a full 1 gig of storage space or something like that for your emails.
Yeah, I remember being on the wait list, and my dad got an account first, and I was so jealous because I was waiting for that account to drop, and I don't even know why I wanted it. I just knew that I had to have a Gmail account.
Yeah. Well, and then of course I ended up getting one, and it definitely stuck. Of course there were all the other options before that. It was AOL for a minute, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then, after 20 years of using that stuff, organization becomes a really big, it's almost like you coast through the sweet spot, and you goes from like not a problem at all to, oh my God, I don't even know how I can organize this stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of like the frog being boiled thing. You get used to it. And it's funny because there's almost no one in the space that I'm in, and yet the problem is ubiquitous. And it's just become something that everyone is used to, of just struggling all the time. And if everyone else is struggling, then it's just, and that's just part of your life. It just feels like that's part of the struggle, because there's all kinds of hard stuff that we deal with in life. And yet it doesn't take that much to actually overhaul it and make your life so much better. Yeah.
Well, so on this episode, I mean, I've got some ideas on questions, but I'm also ready to just kind of wing it. I'm just going to think of things, and I'll just throw, fastballs at you and see what kind of ideas you have. Because obviously it's an unusual matchup too. Perhaps it is. I don't know. I mean, you work with all kinds of different people in different situations. Mm-hmm. I imagine a lot of people you work with are probably like in an office setting, but there must be a lot of people that are also in sort of, we sort of pride ourselves on the tech thing if we're involved in tech, whether it's audio or video or I don't know, coding or whatever. And so it'll be good to discover that stuff that works for everybody is going to work for us too, It
totally does. I mean, the things, everyone feels like they're unique, and your situation is unique, but in the end, it's still the core principles, and it's, we can take the concepts that are working for a manufacturing business and apply the same concepts to a recording studio, but we just have to be creative in the application of it. But it's still the same process of cleaning up and realizing we have to think through the sharing aspect. For recording studios, some people are going to have their own accounts that they want you to put their files in their folders that they share with you. Sometimes you're going to share from yours. Like, how are we going to deal with that when someone wants it delivered in Dropbox, someone else wants share file, and someone else's Google Drive? What do we do when we're juggling so many different platforms? And we're seeing this across every industry.
Yeah.
So I think there's a ton of applicable stuff.
All right, cool. Well, we'll be diving into that in just a moment. But before we do, give us a little bit of your backstory too. I mean, how'd you end up doing this stuff? I mean, you probably didn't leap straight into it. I can't ask you how you went from your first interest in playing music to running a studio. So it's more like, what was your beginning of interest in this stuff that led you there? Because I think you went through things like working, being an Apple genius and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So I worked at the Apple store and I was a creative there, which is a lesser known title at the store. But at a certain time period, you could buy a new Mac, and upon buying the Mac, you could spend an extra $100 for a one-on-one membership. And that means you could book an hour call or an hour sit down with one of the creatives, and we'd teach you how to use your technology. And so, I sat down with people for 7 years and taught them how to use their stuff. And I saw people overwhelmed with their technology, and especially the mess. And, I love teaching, and that's great. There's a spot for that. Is my hand in the camera? Are we good?
No, we're good. No? We're good.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
just always checking, make sure we're still in focus.
Cool.
And all that stuff.
So we, a lot of people, learning is great and teaching that. I love doing it, but I just realized that there is a real need for people who get totally overwhelmed with a mess and not knowing what to do with it. And there are a lot of people out there in companies. You might have an owner who just keeps driving forward and they can deal with the mess, but the people working for them can't.
Right.
And so trying to serve each one of those people, whether it's an overwhelmed business leader or a director or someone who's just juggling a lot.
That actually, I can really relate to that. So I know for me, running the podcast has been an element of that. Running the studio as well. But running the podcast is the first time I ever really started working with virtual assistants.
Yes.
And so I end up with a system. I feel like as the person running the podcast or running the studio, you have to be able to pivot very quickly with an idea and try this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to do this. Okay, that didn't work. We're going to do this. And so, you kind of keep a lot of that together in your head.
Yeah.
But it can be hard for somebody else that you're working with to follow, because they're like, what do you want me to use? How do you want me to do this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, you can totally drive people crazy with that. And another mistake that we see is people hiring an assistant and expecting them to come up with the system for you.
Right.
And
been there, done that.
Most of the time, that does not work. How was your experience doing it?
Well, when I started, when it comes to that, I mean, I started out seeking out an assistant to help me do a specific thing on the podcast. And in that experience, what I did is I decided I've figured out how to do this particular thing. Like it would be take maybe a finished episode and post it and share it and publish it each week and stuff like that. So it was a part that I thought, I should try and look for help to do that part so I can focus on this other part, And now that I'm doing a video show, of course, I've got all kinds of things from like, boy, I could use some help, But at that point, what I decided to do was I decided to teach myself how to do it really streamlined, and then reached out through, I think it was like Upwork and Fiverr or places. And I said, here's a video of me doing exactly, well, first I think I said, can you use these tools? And then I said, here's a video of me doing the exact tasks in order in 45 minutes time. Here's how much I've got to afford for that. This much money equals that much time, do you want to do it? And so then I found somebody great. Yeah. And we've been working together for a long time. And then once we got going with that, then it became clear that it's like, all right, now we've got a good system in place. So now I can trust that that if he's got ways to do things slightly different or whatever, that's fine. I don't need to know about all the details at that point.
I mean, and that's kind of the perfect way to do it is you figure out the system or get help from someone who knows that workflow. Find, a friend who's got a successful recording studio who's figured out the whole flow, or hire someone like us to come in and figure that out. And then you find someone who can run that for you, because then you don't have to hire this A player who can figure it all out for you, and then you're dependent on them. Because in the end, you don't know if that person is going to stay or not. Like you don't need to know absolutely everything, but you should at least establish the baseline to make sure we actually own the things that people are creating for us, because that is, I mean, if not now, at some point we've got to get into that, of the aspect of ownership of files, of who owns them, especially when we're working with contractors.
Yeah, that's a good point. So lots to talk about in that particular topic. One of the places that I think about that is very common in a studio would be like, all right, if you want to interact with other people, it's very common for us to use Dropbox in the studio. Somehow Dropbox became the place to put, all your session files, your recording sessions and your video stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it works pretty great for audio. And I do know sometimes people will use Google for it. It's usually the artist that will send stuff that way, because they can figure out how to just send it in an email pretty much, But I've also had a situation where, related to the podcast, where I had an assistant who was helping edit the podcast. And then we did a shared folder, because we'll get more into that. All right.
Yeah.
So shared folder means it's a folder that I can put stuff in, but whoever's working with me can put stuff in and take stuff out. And if they remove something, it removes on my end. If they add something, I see it added on my end as well, right?
Yeah, and the mechanics of that sometimes work the way you expect, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
In general, we'll say yes.
Yeah. So in general, that's the way to think about it, as opposed to if I'm I've got this folder, I want you to see it and just pull out whatever it is that you need to look at or something.
Yeah.
Then I would share a link to the folder, so they don't actually have to have control of the folder.
And the mechanics of that change from platform to platform, but they usually have the same thing of share a link so that they can have access to it. And that could be public, or you can say just individually to one person. And even if you're doing it individually, you can say, I really only want them to be able to view and comment, or you can view, comment, and edit. But,
right. Yeah. And I feel like some of those, one of the things, the feature creep thing too, sometimes you learn how a tool works and then you go back later and you're like, oh, they've changed the way it works now. And I have to find that. So this is a reference to our intro where it's things are always changing for you. But the story for me with the shared Dropbox folder was going in there at one point, and I had a whole collection of stuff that I was expecting to find there, and it was all gone.
Wow.
It was empty.
That's horrible.
I was like, that's the whole deal.
Yeah.
It's empty. And so it was like a freak out for a moment. And then of course, what it turned out was a scenario where somebody was assisting or helping on a project. And then later on, and then time passes and we're not working together, maybe a year or something or more.
Yeah.
And then they probably just went through and they were like, oh, I'm just clearing out old stuff. And so then they just go get rid of something, and it inadvertently, accidentally clears out what you were counting on still using. So that's, to me, an example of why you want to be incredibly careful about sharing access to folders and cloud stuff.
I think this may actually be the most important thing that we talk about today, in just realizing how that works, and maybe spending a few minutes to break it down, because you could totally be in a situation where you're collaborating with these people and you think that the project's done and the whole thing, it's all wrapped, and then stuff can just go missing and you'll never know when it happened. Now, lucky for you, this is a situation where it was a folder that you access daily, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. Right. So you knew it was gone. But there are tons of people out there in businesses that their stuff is just gone and they don't even realize it.
Right. They didn't even know it was missing.
Yeah.
They just thought it was stored in a safe place.
Yeah. So can we talk about how we got here?
That, yeah.
So I think a lot of us use Dropbox, and especially studios, because it was the first.
Right.
Right? That I remember being in beta. I was working at Apple. It was 2007, and Dropbox announced it. I'm like, this is what I've been wanting all this time, especially once the iPhone came out. And so we had Dropbox, and it was really cool, but it was built for consumers.
Yeah.
And so was Google Drive, and so was OneDrive. And what that means is when we're working with a consumer tool is the ownership is focused on individuals. So who is the individual that created that file, and that's the person who owns it. So in your situation, Liz, you had a folder that you had invited someone else who was assisting you to access this folder, and they started putting stuff in there. Mm-hmm. Anything that person puts in your folder, they own. And so they have control over it.
Right.
And that's the subscriptions that everything started with. So we'll get to the next. So, and that's Google Drive and Dropbox.
Particularly in Google Drive, I noticed that.
Especially in Google Drive,
You see names attached to something and you see it.
They try and make it a lot more clear.
Right.
And they've been doing a better job with trying to make things a little more clear. And I think at some point we should talk about the shared files in Google Drive, because it drives a lot of people nuts of how it works. Like, I can never find anything.
Yeah.
But I'd love to break that down too.
I will say, I think in the studio world, I'm going to assume from my own experience and also from what I hear from a lot of others that I work with, that we think about Google Drive and places like that as a place to organize documents, communications, calendars, that kind of thing. And we typically think about, although they still come to me, project files and stuff like that, audio and video stuff comes that way sometimes. But primarily, I think we tend towards using the projects go in Dropbox, the communications and documents, and the music charts for the session go in Google Drive, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and that is just habit.
It's just a file name.
It's not habit, and it's just a different place to store things. But it doesn't have to be. It could all of it could happen in Google Drive if you wanted it to.
So in the same way that Dropbox will have like a local folder, Google Drive can just have a local folder.
Totally.
And you can open projects and save your video edit in there, and it'll show up synced up and everything. Yep.
Now what I found is Dropbox is the best sync tool that you can install on your computer. And as far as accuracy and speed of copying files that you have just saved locally on your computer, and then the Dropbox app sees it and syncs it to the server, it's the best.
Okay, good to hear.
I think Dropbox is number one, probably Google Drive second, OneDrive third, Box is like lowest on my
Apple
list. Yeah, share file horrible. iCloud, I mean, it's
very useful. I
tool.
use it for stuff, but I'm struck by how slow it is for the file to show up on the next computer.
And
Even
if
Apple
you screw
notes.
up a setting, and they do some update and it asks you something about iCloud Drive, and then all of a sudden everything disappears, and you're like, where's all of my stuff? I mean, it's rare that I come across someone with Mac who didn't have that experience if they've been around for the past 10 years through iCloud's and Mobile Me's mishaps over the years. But yeah, if I didn't do stuff for business and what I do, then sure, I just use iCloud Drive for everything, but absolutely not for business.
At Isotope, tone shaping is topping the charts. Meet the Catalyst series, Plasma, Aurora, and Cascadia. Plasma's flux saturation technology brings dynamic warmth and depth to your mix. Aurora takes spatial audio to new heights with lush adaptive reverb, while Cascadia adds exciting delays to your mix, retaining clarity through its smart unmasking feature. Get 10% off Plasma, Aurora, Cascadia, or any of the Isotope plugins with the special code ROCK10 and make your mixes rock at isotope.com. Well, here's a question for you related to iCloud and Apple stuff, because I I took a tip from Graham Cochran, actually, a long time ago, who mentioned that he just used Apple Notes to organize things. So part of his message was his organizational system was just so simple, and I thought, oh, maybe I'm overlooking that. So I started using a lot more of Apple Notes. And then I discovered more recently that Apple Notes, I could never figure out a way to go in there and easily manage the file size. So if Apple Notes, if you include videos and images in there and voice memo notes and really try and use it like a folder system and organized and all that, you want to have access on your phone, it downloads the entire database to your phone.
Wow.
So you'll have 100 gigs on your phone used up for Apple Notes. And nobody seems to know how to manage that or remove it other than you'll just have to go in and manually delete everything.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about. Now maybe the stuff you're going to teach us is organizational systems that make it a little easier to go in and find the things that you don't need now and therefore can archive or something like that. Or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
but
we totally can.
If you want to keep on the Dropbox and Google Drive
I do
stuff,
want to close that loop.
Let's keep going.
So the history is consumer tools and it's individual ownership. So you create a folder, you invite me, I put something in there, I own it. So and just that fact alone, probably everyone listening has a scenario where that's the case. And so what's the solution at this point? Well, you either ask the person who owns it to transfer ownership to you, which can happen with the various platforms, or if that's not available, then you make a copy of it and then delete their copy out of your folders so that there's no confusion of which one you're supposed to use.
So how would you do that? So let's just say we've just got, let's say we're doing a session and somebody on the session has written the charts, but as the studio, you put the folder together to organize all the stuff we're going to need for the recording session, and you don't want to risk losing those charts from the session. You want to make sure you got them. So now there's 10 documents, 10 Google Docs in the folder that were created by the guitar player on the session, and his name is on them. You just go and you just duplicate right there. You just select it, copy that file, and now you have a copy that you created.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't have to cut it. You don't have to cut and paste all the text out of one and into a new one.
You can just right click on the file and hit make a copy.
All right.
And you can do the same thing. You can hold down the shift key or command or control to select multiples and make copies, and it'll say copy of. So then you can see, which ones are there.
All right, cool.
But there may be another way to do this to avoid that in the first place when we get to that.
Can I do a follow-up question on that?
Sure, yeah.
What if that guitar player you've been working with for the last 5 years on sessions and you just learned this and you're like, hey, dude, is there a way you could ask that individual to go in and they could immediately see, or you can immediately see every file they've ever shared with you, duplicate them all so that they show up in folders and now you've made safety copies of them?
Yeah, so like in Google Drive, for example, you can find a specific folder if you want to search inside of that, and then you right-click on that folder, and I believe it's under the Organize option, and then you can say Search within this folder, and then that's going to show you a new window up at the top, and if there's an icon that are slider icons to the right of the search box. So you click on that and you can say owned by and switch that to not me or a specific person. And then you put that email address in.
Oh, the sliders is like filters for the search.
Right, exactly. Right. It's just the icon of 3 sliders. So you can click that, and then that way you can narrow it down. So you can search for files owned by, Liz at Toybox or whatever the email address is, and it'll show me any files that are owned by them.
Okay, cool. Rockstars, you see this live right here. Yeah. In the same way that we could visualize all of the inside of Pro Tools or Apple Logic, Shawn's visualizing the inside of Google Drive.
I am. I'm seeing it right now. Like, okay, what's the different option? Now, the downside to this, Liz, is if you highlight all those and then hit make a copy, it's just going to stick them all in my drive. If they're Like if they're scattered into a bunch of different folders.
If they're in different folders, they'll
if they're
all
in
end up
different folders,
in one
it
place
doesn't
for now.
copy them in place. I wish Google would have a feature that says copy in the current location and don't just dump them all into the main
drive.
folder.
Right,
like,
right.
Why
Okay,
do they do
so
this?
good to know. Good to know, Rockstars. Good to know. Pay attention to that. So if you do duplicate them, they'll all be there. So maybe immediately after you did that, go select everything you just duplicated, put them into a new folder, and at least you've got that backup. Maybe you just call it archive of so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then if you're ever looking for it where it's supposed to be and it's not there, you could also go like, maybe it's in archive of so-and-so.
Totally. There's some other strategies as well. Like if things are in Google Docs and you don't mind them being converted to Word, what you can do is take the folder that's just got a bunch of various owners and you download it to your computer. Then once it's downloaded, delete that folder and upload the one that you just downloaded. So
say that one more time.
Yeah. So the idea is you got a folder that has a bunch of different owners in it, and you want to make sure that you keep the folder structure just the way it is. Like it would be a mess to go in and try and track down all the files owned by this person or that. You download the folder. And what that's going to do is it's going to make a copy of all of that information into a folder and download it locally to your machine. Once it's done, open it up, of course, verify, make sure that you feel comfortable that everything is there, it should be. Then you delete that folder from Google Drive or Dropbox, and then you take the folder that was downloaded and you drag it up back into Google Drive, and then it uploads everything again.
But now you're the owner of every file.
But you're the owner of everything because you're the one who uploaded
that's
the
brilliant.
file.
That's much easier than doing the version where
it's
you
way easier.
duplicate everything.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you tried that and you're like, crap, that didn't work. You probably could still go in with most cloud services, like with Dropbox or something, for example, when everything was missing from my folder, all we had to do was go back, find recently deleted, and just restore the entire folder. But we caught it within the window of time before it expired based on our account and plan or whatever. But most would do that. So Google would probably have a feature like that to restore.
Yeah, they've got a trash, and it stays in the trash for 30 days.
Yeah, so that would be the way to sleep at night. You could also just rename assuming these files weren't so big that they were going to eat up your entire cloud storage. If they're a bunch of documents, it's not as huge as if they were all like video files or something like that. Or, God forbid, Apple, what are the 3D glasses now? The Apple Vision files, the Apple Vision Productions.
Yeah, wow. And sometimes, Liz, this problem is just so huge that what we need to do is just use a service to copy everything, using a server to tap into the Google Drive and make copies of everything. We had one company, a learning-based company. So they it's called ProLearn, something like that. Anyway, we stopped counting at 100 contributors to their filing system. I can imagine recording studios can be a similar way, and that it's just so big. Trying to download everything and re-upload it is absolutely not practical.
Yeah.
So usually what we use is a tool called Cloud HQ, and that's what we take and say, go find this and make a copy over here. And then we trash the old.
So it sort of copies it all
system
within the cloud, so you don't have to bring it down.
Exactly. So it's just they tap in with APIs from the source to the destination, and that may be even the same account. And then it uses their server, so it grabs it and then just passes it right along to the destination, and that way you've got a fresh start. And that's what we do when we're trying to switch people to the newer solution that I think we can probably get to now, which would be shared drives in Google Drive or team folders in Dropbox or SharePoint for, well, who's using Microsoft?
I feel like, I could be wrong. I have had people deliver audio files in the audience on platforms I haven't seen before, different versions, but generally speaking, people seem to be very familiar with Dropbox and Google for sure. Yeah.
So since these services started as consumer products that, they were bootstrapped and, to an extent, they were funded and everything, but, it started small and then the feature set grew based on audience demand.
Yeah.
Well, the business world wanted it. And so they had problems like this ownership. And so a solution had to be created. And that's why we have Dropbox Business. That's why we have Google Workspace. And we have different versions of Google Workspace and different features
G
available.
Suite, for example, that's the same thing as Google Workspace.
Yeah, it started as Google Apps. Then they rebranded to G Suite. And then they rebranded to Google Workspace. Right. So it's all the same thing.
We've been using that. And I always feel like... I think we onboarded it initially because it was like, oh, it's going to let us have a domain email address that will show up easily in Google and Gmail or something
and
like
you
that.
get the calendar and
and the calendar
all
and all
the
that
things
stuff, which
as well.
The calendars, that's a nightmare in itself. I think I've written all these questions down, but since we're riffing so quickly, I'm gonna have to take extra notes, make sure I don't forget. But with the Google Workspace, that's I don't want to butcher the terms. That one is one where I'm like, I know we're not using this to its full. Whatever we're paying for, we're not using what we're paying for yet.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone like truly fully utilizes all the tools. You can do so much with it. I use it a lot and still not tapping into all of it. But with Google Workspace, the starting point is Starter. So Google Workspace Business Starter. And that's not good enough. You need Standard. So you're going to pay at least $12 a month per account for that. And why you want it is they have the shared drives. And shared drives means that when you create a folder and you invite me to it, when I put something in your folder, you own it.
Okay.
So this is built for business. I'm the one who owns this folder. I'm sharing it with you to collaborate, and you're outside my organization or even internal. When you put something in there, ownership is going to transfer to me. And that way, when you offboard that contractor or employee or whoever, then they go bye-bye from your system and the files stay. So that really
makes sense.
the way to go.
In a business setting, that also makes more sense because there's an understanding that you're working together, and so therefore, it's like if I don't know, it makes sense with like in a family setting, a family and friends setting, it also makes sense that like if you upload if you share a photo of yourself with everybody, you should have the right to remove the photo of yourself later, right?
Yeah. So that's what that's all about. And there's certain cases where an artist might want to share something with you and they don't want to transfer ownership to you. Like, what's going on with this? Or I have my folder.
Does it give you like a message pop up saying?
Yeah. So if you create something and then you move it into someone else's shared drive, it's going to say, hey, ownership is transferring to Toybox Studio, it's Google Workspace.
Yeah. And
then, so it transfers over that way. So, is it okay that I say Toybox Studio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Everybody knows about my studio.
Okay, good. I'm just double checking. So
he's checking on the shared ownership there.
Yeah,
just live on the show.
Yeah. So then what if I have my shared drive and I want to share something with you and I don't want to use yours? Well, you can still accept it. But when you get that share, it's going to show up in the shared with me section. This is the part that drives everyone crazy. It's like, I got the email, I can see it, but I can't find it. It's in shared with me. That's just a master list of everything that's been shared with you.
Right.
Or if you click on a PDF that I share that's hosted in Google Drive, it's going to show up in your shared with me, even though I didn't share it with you specifically.
All right, so let me rewind a little bit. So if we embrace this Google Workspace for our studio, for example, we can have a folder structure that belongs to us. When people upload it to us, it's now there. If they take off, we've still got it. It's safe.
Yes.
And that's all assuming that we're supposed to have all that stuff in our possession. And then, but if we're working with an artist that is like, oh, I use that as well, but this is my stuff that I'm. I don't know what the situation specifically would be, but there is a way for those two like private walled gardens to interact. Our studio's workspace and your band's workspace.
Yeah, maybe you're mastering the files that were recorded somewhere else, And so you got this share, and they want you to work in their space. Well, how do you do that when you've crafted this workflow and this file structure that really makes sense for you, and then all of a sudden you've got an incoming share from someone else? How do you deal with that?
Right. So in other words, as a mastering studio, you might think, I want to keep all of our files organized and accessible to me online in a secure cloud setting. But the client might be like, no, we want you to
work out of ours.
Pull it from ours and put it back into ours.
Yeah.
And so you're saying there's a way to make sure those work together.
And so what that means is they might share that folder with you, and you can still drag that folder into the appropriate, say, client folder or artist folder, whatever you've used for your nomenclature to name your files.
I'm just glad you said nomenclature on this podcast. Makes us all feel so much smarter.
So you can just drag it into your folder, and it's going to appear with a little shortcut icon, which is a little arrow at the bottom of the folder. So you can just operate as normal in your folder structure, but it's actually living in someone else's shared drive. So this is the beauty of technology now is you can have files appear somewhere else without them actually living there. And we can do that with Dropbox and all kinds of different services of creating a shortcut from one place to the other so that we stay organized even though the files may live elsewhere.
So one of the things that us as music creators are excited about when it comes to things like Dropbox is that they finally evolved to where it's like, great, you can have a folder on your desktop, but it doesn't need a terabyte worth of, a 2 terabyte drive dedicated to itself.
Yes.
It just sort of knows if you're using it, or if you haven't used it in a minute, it puts it back in the cloud and it just kind of saves tons of space, which is handy. And does Google Drive have that feature yet too? Or is it a little more selective?
They all do.
They all do. Okay.
Yeah, it's the standard now because, as we've switched from standard hard drives, these like spinning disks that would crash all the time. And I mean, how many people do you know that their internal hard drives have crashed recently? It's so rare. We switched to solid state drives, and solid state drives are way more expensive for the amount of space. So I think the MacBook Pros were starting to ship with, terabytes minimum in the computers, and now they're still shipping with 256 minimum. So, and then to bump it up to 4 terabytes is going to cost you thousands. So we have to sync by what is it called? Like selective sync by default.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum because tech advances. So according to what is it called, Metcalfe's law or whatever, we should be able to have larger and larger drives getting made smaller and smaller, and they all go into the laptops, and who cares? But somehow the tech has changed where, somewhere way up there, they're all thinking, you're not going to need this drive space anymore. It's all just going into the cloud somehow.
Yeah.
And so really you just need, laptops have become like original computers where it's just like a little user station portal to the mainframe.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's actually how it started.
Yeah.
So all of the, in Office originally, and this is before Microsoft, because it was really Bill Gates who had the vision to have an operating system installed on every machine. They were just empty boxes, and you had a server that was the main computer.
Yeah, that was like Xerox and stuff like that.
And so they would call the IBM thing that you would sit down at was your terminal.
Yeah.
But you could only sell so many operating system licenses that way. You might have an office with 200 computers, terminals, but you've only got one operating system. And Bill Gates had the vision of an operating system on every desk.
Fascinating.
And so we went from this very efficient, space-saving, model to everyone having these individual devices that have to be maintained and break and all this stuff to, the world that we're in now. And we're slowly moving back toward that. Well, we still have our own internal operating systems, but the storage is less and less being stored in the computer.
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak and distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift for you to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is, these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Yeah, I guess the analogy would be before there were cars, you'd ride the train to get somewhere.
Right.
But you didn't have to pay for the repairs on the train.
Right.
Once you get your own car, you got to take care of their own maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's see. So where does that take us next? Google Workspace. Tell us about some of the things that we just don't know it can do and how we might use it. Let's say, I'll think of real world examples. So you've already got a Gmail, you've already got a calendar, maybe you're already using the Google Calendar, and then you're like, oh, but I kind of want a calendar for the studio. Oh, but I kind of want a calendar, and these are all real world examples for me. I want a calendar that I share with the interns so that we have our own way of coordinating. I want a calendar I share with different groups or whatever, and then you try and add calendars into your Google Calendar, and then you try and subscribe to things, and it gets a little bit complicated. What's the stuff in Google Workspace that might help us in that department as far as, I guess, shared calendars? Let's just talk about that for a sec. Just staying organized with people.
Yeah. So a big temptation.
And part of this is Dropbox doesn't do calendar, or maybe if they do, who cares, right?
Yeah, they don't. And that's, I think why Dropbox really has the corner on the best sync tool and just overall, they got one thing to focus on. Yeah. Whereas Google's got a lot that they've got to focus on. So it's not going to be as good of an experience. I still use it, and I have a Dropbox account, but I don't use it primarily. But Google Workspace is a workspace, that's got tons of different tools available to us. So a temptation that most people have, and it's kind of makes sense just logically. I want a new email address for the interns, and I want, or need an email address for bookings, and I need an email address for hello, and I need an email address for the podcast and stuff like that. And then that turns into calendars as well. So,
if you want it to feel pro, you want it to have the name of your studio, not at gmail.com.
Right. So that's where I bring that up, just because sometimes people end up creating more accounts to have additional calendars, and it's not needed. Okay. So first off, you do want to have Google Workspace and pay for it. This is online rent. These are the tools that we use. If you want to be legit and not give yourself a bunch of heartache later on down the road, we got to pay for tools. I don't think you should oversubscribe, but
we all definitely do.
But
that's because you're trying to figure out what to do, and you get the next thing, and then you get, and then maybe you don't use it enough, and then you get the next thing.
Yeah, but go back and
get
rid of the ones that you don't need. But especially for the foundational stuff, your Dropbox account, you need Dropbox for Business. I know. Okay,
let me ask a question that might be a pushback from people, or just not even a pushback.
And
just
we'll get back to calendars.
just a question. If let's say you need 5 email addresses for the people that are doing your studio with you. Yeah. And you need, and you're like, well, we have to have a website. But then you're also like, what is a website today? It's not really, it's just a business card page with our contact and emails and maybe a welcome form or something like that, and images and other things. Do we even need to think about, signing up for a website hosting service to a company? Because when you would sign up for a website in the past, they would offer you email, and you could make email addresses there. Right. But it was a little maybe clunky, and maybe you had to then tie that back into having your Gmail fetch those emails and stuff. Is it more elegant and simple if you stick to a Google Workspace?
So first off, when you buy your domain they're typically going to try and sell you web hosting and everything else along with it.
Right.
And now the junk email addresses that everyone was trying to get away from before, it's rare to see that offered as a solution. And it used to be you get that for free when you're hosting your website, and you can still use that stuff. But they're really trying to push using either Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. So whoever's selling you the domain, they're going to want to sell you licenses for those things as well. And I don't think that you should buy them through the web host.
Yeah.
I think you should buy them directly from Microsoft if you're a Microsoft person, or go and sign up for a Google Workspace account directly from Google. Because usually what the resellers are trying to do, we'll say GoDaddy, for example, is they want to sell you 5 licenses. And you think, oh, yeah, I need email, and it's 5 licenses, and we're going to give you a deal, and it's going to be a 2-year agreement and the whole thing. And then you realize you're only using 3. You just paid $120 for 2 licenses that you're not going to use. Yeah. And then you're locked into this, and now you can't get out of it for 2 years. Like, what the heck, man? Like, we really want flexibility, and I don't want you tied to your web host, because you may say, I actually do want a nice one, and I'm going to switch to Squarespace, or I'm going to want a really nice one. I want someone to
When you say nice one, you mean a nice looking website.
Nice website,
right,
yeah.
And we certainly can go there. I mean, like there are a lot of us who want to do that, but I think sometimes we also go there for the nice website, and we realize we didn't. I can't tell you the number of people I have on the show when we interview them, like, oh yeah, I haven't updated the website in forever. I haven't looked at it.
Totally.
I feel that way about my studio website.
Yeah, especially for a business that's just so referral based.
Yeah.
And if the market's saturated, trying to make yourself stand out is really expensive. I got a friend he's got an SEO business, and his website is basically a business card, because like, I'm not trying to compete for SEO. The amount of money that it would take for me to show up in Google search results for this, it's not worth it.
Right.
So I need a business card, but we have other ways of gaining business besides the website. But it's something that like you typically want to have a presence for.
Right. So I'll help clarify that. I would say the majority of listeners on this want to have a website, but whether we understand it or not, I don't think many of us are trying to be first in search results. More like if somebody's looking for us, it's like, hey, did you hear about, Lemonhead Studio?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And then you're like, oh, lemonhead.com, and you go check it out, and you're like, oh, look at the pictures. That looks awesome.
There you go.
And
it's like, keep it simple.
And that's really just a business card as opposed to something that needs to show up. I mean, if you Google for something directly, you're going to find it. SEO is about somebody Googling for something
East
in
National
a general
Recording
concept,
Studios,
and then having it show up. So let's back up a little bit from there. We still want to be able to. We still probably want to get a domain name, because our studio or whatever we have, we want to be able to have that ability to say nameofstudio.com, and then you put that into the search, and it takes you to that website. That's what a web domain name is.
Yeah.
It's a DNS.
It's the calling card for the internet. It's the domain name, like, how do I know where to route things? So, the DNS says, when I send an email to Shawn at the Digital Organizer, the internet says, well, where's that inbox located? And so they look at the DNS, it's the phone book records, and it says, deliver that to Google. And then Google sees the email address, and it makes sure that it lands in my inbox.
Right. And so we will want a domain name, but if we want a fancy website, then we want to attach the name to a website hosting service that lets us do all these fancy building block websites and everything, like WordPress styles or Squarespace and stuff.
Wix,
but if we just need something simpler, if we just needed a one-page calling card, would we consider hosting that somewhere within Google Workspace, or do we still want to get some sort of
there's a way to do it with
space?
Google Sites, but it has to be your main thing, and I don't know that I would.
Okay.
I don't know that
that's probably a good enough answer for me.
It's like, it's just a little too technical.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Man, this is the juice is not worth the squeeze. $20 a month for a Squarespace site or
All right,
whatever.
yeah,
It's just, throw it up there and make it happen and cost to do business.
All right, groovy. So we've got a domain name from Big Daddy, or what's
Big Daddy. GoDaddy. Actually,
Daddy,
if you're going to buy your domain from anywhere, buy it from Cloudflare.
Okay.
There
good tip.
there are no markups. What I pay $10.44
Cloudflare. I think they were in the news not too long ago.
No, maybe, but the internet shutting down would be. I'm
just kidding around it, but that was related to some operating system update on massive.
No, that's CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike. Yeah, they're a cybersecurity company. Yeah, Cloudflare is actually, they're well, let's not get into it, but they don't do markups. And so you'll pay $30 a month what I pay $10.44 a year, or $30 a year versus my, $10. And everything's faster, and you're not constantly upsold and whatever. It's just just what you need.
I'm circling that one, Rock. So it's Cloudflare.
It's a great one. If your domains are coming up for renewal, you might want to switch to using Cloudflare. So you need to buy a domain. You might want to get a website. You can get a domain and not have a website and just have email hosting too. Right. There's plenty of people that I work with that have that.
So just to keep adding clarity to it, so we get the domain name. Maybe we get the website on Cloudflare. But then we need the email addresses. And at that point, we're like, let's go over to Google Workspace. And that's where we're going to buy the email addresses. And so you pay per email address or something like that?
That's right.
Okay. All right. So you do want to be considerate about how many you're doing.
That's right. And so that's where we kind of like taking the long way around to get back to this, which is you might not want to create a studio at toyboxstudio.com or whatever your URL is. So because you're going to have to pay $12 a month if you commit yearly, or $14.40 a month for every single email address you create. So we might want to create these things called aliases. So you can have a bunch of different ones. So
let me again, I'm going to keep clarifying. You're saying I used to make one called Lidge at the toyboxstudios.com or something like that. And then you'd be like, oh, we need one called support at the Toybox Studio. Oh, we need one called Office at the. We need one called Calendar. And you're saying don't do that anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't necessarily have to. I'm just saying there are other strategies to do this.
Each of those would cost money. Anyway.
Yeah, because you have to pay for it.
Right.
And so if you can, I want you to be as minimal as possible, but still, it's got to be functional, right? So, sometimes it's worth just paying to have a dedicated inbox. But and my support account used to not be a dedicated account. It is now because of the volume.
Right.
My info account it has an alias, which is hello, which is what we send our emails from. It's hello at the Digital Organizer is where all of our email marketing comes from. But if you reply to that, it comes to info. And when I reply with info. So that way I'm not having to pay for a bunch of different accounts when I don't necessarily need them. My accounting at the Digital Organizer, it's forwarded somewhere else. It's an alias because I don't have an accounting team. It's me. And then I've got bookkeepers and some other stuff who take care of stuff, but they're contractors. Right.
So in a studio scenario, we would have the names of the people at the studio that need to be contacted. We might be using a QuickBooks Online or something like that for payment kind of stuff. So there might be some communication there. I don't know how much we would need an accounting address necessarily, but maybe we would. I don't know. It
could be nice to just segment billing so that, in Gmail, one of the things that we can do is say, if an email was sent to this address, skip the inbox and go to this folder for me. And so that could be something that you do as well for certain incoming leads or form fills that happen or certain newsletters that you want. So that's another way that you could use it.
Let me ask the question about the way that things seem to function now. It seems like, if you go and look at your email that's coming in, Google has already said, hey, we're already identifying these as primary and these are updates and these are I don't even remember what the other ones are because I don't look at them, which is too bad because, there are many people who are trying to build and grow their business out there with studios or whatever by having a, some sort of newsletter or some sort of promotion, or, hey, we're running a special. And so maybe some of the challenges are, getting people to actually look in that folder or whatever. That's probably a different interview.
Yeah.
But what are some things about organizing our own email? Mine has become, it's so massive, I just try not to look at it.
Yeah. Well, so
if you email
get
me
into
Rockstars, I'll see it and I'll get back to you. But
yeah. Well, so I'm not going to go too deep into the process, because if you sign up for our file organization guide, which I want to give you, that's thedigitalorganizer.com/RSR. We'll put that in the show notes.
Fantastic.
But when you sign up for that, I'm going to send you some emails on how to clean this up.
Yeah.
And so how to truly unsubscribe from emails and it actually work. How to declare email bankruptcy. So that doesn't mean deleting emails, but getting it out of the inbox so that we can actually see and get rid of the anxiety of this huge number, which a lot of people don't realize how much it actually affects them. It doesn't matter. Like 3,000 messages, I don't care.
3,000?
Well, once
I'd
they
be
go
sleeping
away,
like a baby if I only had 3,000
or 30,000.
messages.
Our record is 300,000 in the inbox and 1 million total.
Wow.
But anyway.
I don't think I'm going to beat that record.
So how do you get on top of it?
Where do you even look at the number?
Actually, the way that you can see
like,
how much email is in your entire account is in Gmail. On the left-hand side, you'll click on More. And then once that expands a few more options, you should see All Mail. And you click on that. And then in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a number next to the left and right buttons.
Well, I see Inbox, Primary. Oh, All Mail. I see it there.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's showing me one of 50 results of 326,563.
There you go.
How's that?
Yep. Good bit of emails. Yep. So what do you do to get on top of this? Well, the first thing is in Gmail, and I'm going to show you this if you sign up for that file download. There's a special search that you could say if it's before : and then you put in the date. So 2024 10/01, and then hit enter, and it's going to show you all of the emails that are in your inbox before that date. And then you can select everything and say archive. That doesn't delete it, just gets it out of the inbox. So now you're just left with, say, the last 30 days worth of email. And that way you can go through and start unsubscribing from newsletters. And we're not just clicking on the unsubscribe button, closing the window that pops up and going back and doing the next one. We got to wait for that page to load, because you're probably added to 5 different lists, 15 different lists in some cases, Old Navy or something. You're going to be on 30 different lists. It's crazy. So we have to wait for that to load and make sure that it fully unsubscribes. And 19 times out of 20, you will be off that list. There's some offenders that will continue to email you even after you've unsubscribed. Go high level. Someone subscribed me to a trial and they won't stop emailing, and I've unsubscribed 4 times from all, in which case you can actually report them to the FTC. And they can get a massive fine if they don't actually pull you off the unsubscribe list. So know that there's repercussions for repeat offenders.
I'm breaking a sweat over here. Now, occasionally I get emails from rock stars who say like, hey, unsubscribe or please unsubscribe or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes people use services.
That's
any
right.
emails we send have a built-in unsubscribe button that should work. But I think it depends, because we might have and I'm just describing it from this side.
Yeah.
We might have a few different services that the email goes on to.
That's right.
One's website, reminder of a podcast episode. Another one might be like, oh, this is a reminder of the free course that you signed up for.
Yeah, if you got Klaviyo and
so they
MailChimp
don't
or
always
something.
talk to each other, but, do the best we can. And then one of the tips that I remember learning as a provider of something that somebody subscribed to, that I remember hearing on a podcast once, was a lot of times people reply to an email and they say, hey, unsubscribe me. And they would say, hey, by the way, sometimes just scroll down the email because they might be replying to something and the unsubscribe button is still there. And you, as the original sender of the email, can still hit the unsubscribe button and just unsubscribe them yourself.
Totally. Yeah.
But it is tricky. I mean, we live in a world where this, the bots are just out there.
It's tough.
Sending and receiving, and it's hard to know what's going on all the time.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm eagerly awaiting a solution for the cold pitches because, I mean, now it's just the cold pitches are just increasing like crazy because of the ability to just spin up an AI server and just start blasting out emails. I mean, tens of thousands of emails a day on your behalf trying to get leads. And, people just are like, hey, great, I could use AI for getting leads. Cool. They just don't realize how much pollution they're creating in people's email accounts, or maybe they don't care because they're just starving for some money.
We'll probably talk about some AI stuff too here in a moment. Hopefully we will, because I do think it's a bit of a trope, the conversation about what's so scary about it. Mm-hmm. To me, it's more exciting about what's really cool about it.
Yeah, I definitely have a more abundance mindset about it.
Rock your music production with the updated Complete 15 bundle from Native Instruments, featuring the new Contact 8. This comprehensive collection includes a fantastic range of versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative studio effects, giving you everything you need to bring your music to life. Whether you're composing emotional scores, deep dance floor grooves, or experimenting with sound design, Complete 15 has you covered. Discover powerful plugins and instruments that guide you from the initial idea all the way through to the final mix. The included Contact 8 introduces exciting new tools like chords and phrases for instant inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a cutting-edge hybrid instrument that merges organic and synth sounds in real time. Plus, enjoy revamped versions of Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro to take your sound to the next level. Then polish your mixes off with the AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11 included in Complete 15 bundle. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, a.k.a. the second half of the show, a.k.a. what else am I going to call it? My guest today is Shawn Lemon joining us here, and we're talking about the digital organizer and how this kind of awesome stuff can apply to our studios. So you ready to jam, dude?
Let's do it.
All right. We kind of covered some good stuff in email. You did say that we don't want to create all these different account names, that there was a new way to do it. Did we touch on,
yeah, we talked about aliases. So you can create aliases, or some people just think like, I just want an address that forwards somewhere else. That's an alias. That's what Google calls it.
So in Google, in Gmail, you just say make a new alias or something like that?
Yeah, you have to do it from the admin console. So you find the user, and then there's a spot for alternate address. And so you can click on that and then create a new alias.
Right.
It's also, if you are considering rebranding at some point, and you're like, man, I know it's going to be a lot. There's changing the addresses and all the emails and stuff. That is something that can be so easy in Google Workspace. I mean, there's still like at least a lot easier than how you would do it, most likely, where we can just make some changes. Like you need to reach out to somebody or talk to Google about rebranding, because most people just create a whole new workspace. So I bring that up because you can have in your Google Workspace multiple domains. So I rebranded from ShawnLemon.com to thedigitalorganizer.com. Mm-hmm. And so what I did is I just added another domain in the workspace. And so that way I can create email addresses from any for any domain that I own. And so then I just rename Shawn at Shawn Lemon to Shawn at the Digital Organizer. And there's no extra change to make except sign out of my accounts and sign back in on my apps. So it's that type of thing that we get to do with aliases. So you can have a different brand and it still forwards to your main account. So there's a lot of money that we can save by doing this stuff. And so that was, kind of coming back to the original question of what else can we do with Google Workspace that we didn't realize? Well, you can save yourself a whole bunch of money by adding multiple domains to the same workspace and just creatively using the email addresses that you might want to create.
And you still go get the domain at a
you still get it somewhere else, typically. Cloudflare, if you're going with my suggestion. Cloudflare, but use whoever you want. I think GoDaddy
I was about to say Big Daddy again.
Big Daddy. They take advantage of people. So you just go and get a new domain and add it in there. So And then there's your calendars. So we don't need to create additional email addresses to create additional calendars. So in Google Calendar on the web, down at the bottom, there's a little plus icon. And you can create a new calendar, and that's a secondary calendar. So every account has a primary, and you can create secondaries.
So before we go dive into the calendar thing, one last thing is when I got into trying to stay organized in a Google environment, and maybe I had a personal email address, and then it was like, oh, I'm going to get I think it was Recording Studio Rockstars one, and then it was like, okay, now we got the domain. Now it's like, me at recordingstudiorockstars.com. Rockstars, if you need to reach me, Lidge at recordingstudiorockstars.com. But now, once we switched over to the Google Workspace, I think it was still called G Suite when we were signed up. Now I find myself opening a tab for personal email view, another one for the RSR Gmail view, and another one for our domain name view. Is that the sort of the smart way to be going through our email? Is it smart to just sort of, when you open up the browser and you're looking at your list of emails, you're looking at your incoming and outgoing work emails versus your personal? Or do people sometimes mix and match both, and that's a bad way to do it? Or is that a good way to do it, where you look in one place and you see both personal and work? What do you want to say about that stuff?
I think that's really about preference, and sometimes it's about the phase of life that you're in too. So, when I first started this business, then I had my third email. I had an iCloud, a Gmail, and then the Google Workspace. And I didn't like having to flip back and forth between them, and I just wanted everything to come into one. So I forwarded my other email addresses to my new Shawn at Shawn Lemon account, and then I found that I still had to go back to those other accounts because I had historical information that I was looking for. Right. So then I imported all of the email from those two accounts into my main so that I truly had one unified inbox. But in the end,
that's the unified inbox theory.
Yeah, well, to an extent. But then there are apps, like you can use Apple Mail, you could use Spark, Outlook. There's a bunch of different email apps out there that you could sign into your Gmail account for to see everything in one view without forwarding them to each other.
I think my Gmail app on the iPhone will let me look at all inboxes, or it'll let me select them. It tends to default to wanting to look at one of them or the other.
Yeah.
Then you can just say all mail that's coming in, or primary, or so it kind of organizes it.
So that's the idea behind the apps, is being able to use them, and that way it can bring them all together into one view and make it a little more efficient while still having them in separate accounts. And the reason why that might be important is you might want to have a personal assistant who then starts checking all of your email, especially your work accounts and stuff like that. So you don't necessarily want sensitive information coming into that account. So you still want a private space. But if you did what I did and import everything in there and everything is funneled into this one account, then when I hired an assistant, I then had to go create a private email address for myself because it was going to be impractical to separate those things out. And so at this point, I actually don't really like forwarding email accounts to other places. I'd rather just use an app to check them all in one place, because in the end, the forwarding and stuff, like, you can end up getting into trouble just from that as well. So in some cases it makes sense, but we like to help people figure that out. And I actually have a video where I talk about this. So I've got this thing called a resource library, the Get Organized Resource Library. And this is everything that we teach our coaching clients to, and anyone who works with us. Like, we take them through this system, and then there's tons more, because whenever someone asks us a question over email that we don't already have, we create a video for it and put it in the library. Yeah. So I've got stuff like this in there of like, should I forward my accounts, and why, and in what scenarios? And I break down the whole thing so you can really understand how it works.
That's great. So the Rockstars we'll put that in the show notes too, so you can just click through while or after you're listening to this. Yeah. Go check it out. All right. So what else do you want to say about calendar stuff? Here's a question that I have.
Yeah.
When I talk to somebody who say, "Great, let's do something on Thursday the 17th at 3 p.m." And I put it in my calendar, how do I know that they are organized, and how do I know that they put it in their calendar? And what tips do you have about ways to do stuff like that? I
always send invites. I always send invites. But actually, I always, if possible, I prefer to always send someone a link to my Calendly.
Mhm.
So
To make a schedule an
to
appointment.
schedule an appointment, or if we've agreed upon a time, then I will go to Calendly and I will fill it in, because I
But
know
you have to use their email address, right?
I got to know their email address.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to put it in there because I know that they're going to get a confirmation email. They're going to get an invite. They're going to get reminders about the appointments, like all the things. It's going to show up. And if it's, say, scheduling a call to, talk to me about tech, then they're going to get reminders. And
you do too.
And
well, you get, I guess as the host, you get maybe fewer reminders or something, or it just shows up in our calendar. It goes
it shows up in the calendar, and then whatever reminders you have set. So I always like doing reminders, and I really think that a scheduling tool like Calendly or TidyCal, if you're not into subscriptions and you're okay with it not being as pretty and having as much functionality, it's like $30 or something for a lifetime subscription, and it's a cloud service. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
So, but that is one of the most time-saving, administratively, time-saving things that you can do is set up a scheduler like that. It's
now,
really good.
So let me ask a pushback question on that, because I've been using Calendly for a long time. I discovered it.
Used it
for this
to
podcast.
book me on this. Yeah,
I might have even discovered it through way back with you guys back when we were doing the mastermind.
Yeah, I was.
I can't remember.
I was one of the beta testers, and
probably learned about it from you. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I got on a call. I was helping the founder with some of his tech issues in the very beginning, and in exchange, he was like, "Here, let me give you a membership." I wish it was a lifetime, because I've spent thousands with Calendly at this point. But
man, that's awesome. Hey, how do you like our new mugs? By the way, just got these.
They're beautiful. Very cool.
This side, we see the logo on the camera, but then if a guest or one of us is drinking, it's a reminder to ourselves. Are you ready to rock?
Ready to rock. Yeah.
Ready to rock studios.
I need to make you some mugs.
Okay, so I love it. It's great. I've talked about this on the show too. I created it to make it easy to schedule interviews with guests on the podcast. It's very, very helpful for that. And then even though it was separate brands, I realized, you know what? Maybe I should just use my Calendly. I'll just make a link for scheduling some time with me in the studio for a handful of trusted clients that I work with, where I'm like, it's easier than having the same conversation about when are you available. Here's what the question always looks like when somebody wants to know if they can book time with you in the studio. Like, what's your April look like? Or what's your month look like? And you're like, how do you answer that question? You know? So then it's like, I just made one where it's like, hey, book a full day, book a half day. At least it gets in there and it gets in my calendar, blocks it out from other bookings.
Right.
And that works beautifully. But there are also times where when you use something like a Calendly to schedule things, where you say, I think about it like a negative space system. So you can tell it only book times on Mondays from 10 to 6 or something.
Right.
Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. But then you're like, well, except for if I'm already busy, or you can make a little calendar link in Google that just says, like I made one just called block.
Yeah.
And then I just like, if I'm not sure about a day, I'm like, better block out the time.
Yep.
I just block it out, or I just put it in my personal calendar to say block time, you know, stuff like that. So in other words, you're having to like fill up the space. You're having to make all the blackout dates. I guess that's a way to think about it.
Yeah, totally.
So that it doesn't book it. And then sometimes your calendar looks like everything's blacked out for a month if somebody clicked on the link.
Right.
But you're also trying to make a meeting with somebody where you're like, we really need to have this meeting. Like I'll be flexible. I'll make time to meet with you, but we don't need to do that. We still don't need to do 10 back and forth messages.
That's right.
Like, how do I send somebody a link to do that? Do you know what I'm asking? And do you have a way for doing that?
Yeah. So if you have a Calendly link that doesn't have your true full availability because you have created a curated time block to make sure that it stays within your boundaries or whatever,
Right.
then Calendly has a feature that you can create a custom meeting link that's like a one-time use sort of deal. So you can go to the website. I don't remember the exact steps, but yeah, you can.
It's called like one-off meeting or something.
Exactly, and then you can just
I think
you
it's
can
in the
pick
phone
the times,
app too,
yeah,
which is handy,
and maybe even their Chrome extension. So that would be the way to go, and you can really be selective about it. But one of the things I love about Calendly too, and this whole thing is you can integrate Stripe. So you can collect
Right.
payments. So you can you don't even have to worry about collecting money from anyone. You want the time? Great. Book it and pay for it, baby.
That is a huge tip right there, Rockstar. So if you are doing the studio thing, or if you're working with people and they're just simply booking so many hours of your time to do something in the studio, even if it's mixing, even if it's mastering, whatever it is, but you like having that association of the actual time booked to getting paid for it, you can preemptively put that in there.
Yes.
I have that set up for coaching sessions. So like, for example, if anybody, if you want to reach out to me and do a coaching session where we're on Zoom and we're going through your mix, going through your DAW, your setup, your studio, whatever, there is a way to do that where it's just like you just schedule it and you make the payment and the scheduling and it works.
And for all of you guys who want to raise your prices and you are scared shitless to do so, all you have to do is go into Calendly, update that price, and you don't have to tell anyone the higher price if that makes you uncomfortable.
Right.
Like that's the thing is
it's just in there. The rates are just different.
The rates are different, and if you want the slot, great. Or if you're like, I don't know that I want to work with this person because they're used to me charging them way less.
That's a big one
than I
in the
used to.
creative
Then
world
it's
and in
just
the
like,
studio.
should I cut them a deal? I really don't want to, and they're not even that good of a client in the first place. Like, I want them at the full rate. Send them the link.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, the beauty is with tools like that, you can actually, you don't want to get too complicated with it, but you'd actually make multiple events. You could have the event, the normal one. You could have the indie rate event if we're going to go way back to the 90s, like where people talk this, and the major label rate
/
event.
PIA
just send
for
one to
pain
the other.
in the ass, double the rate.
So then we don't have to go too deep on this one, but another tool that I ended up learning about later that really helps with, so now you're living in this world of like cool tools, links to things, but you're still in a text message, never driving and trying to do this at the same time.
Never.
Right? And you're trying to communicate with somebody and send them the right thing, or God forbid you need your reading glasses on and you can't even see your phone fuzzy half the time and you're trying to send the right thing. So there are tools like Text Expander, and then there's ways to do it within your iPhone too, where you can write out these different links to these Calendly events, for example.
Yeah.
And then just put in a code that, a lot of the times the codes start with the word X because there's not many words that start with X.
Right. Yeah.
So you're just like X.
Some people do
short
Z,
code or
X.
Z.
I use semicolons as the indicator that I want you to paste my Zoom link. I hit semicolon Zoom, and then it fills in my specific Zoom link that I use every time. And then same thing for my website or to book. So one of the things that you can do if you really want to get fancy with your website is well, not really with website, but just to make shortcuts. You can, in your website, you can create these things called forwarding URLs. And so if you go to thedigitalorganizer.com/RSR, it's actually going to forward to LP/RSR, which is the landing page for that specific download. But you can do it to another address. So if you're to go to thedigitalorganizer.com/Backblaze, which is the Backblaze or the backup tool that I typically recommend for someone's computers, that's going to take you to Backblaze's affiliate page for my account. That way you can get a little commission for it. So there's a lot of different things that you can do like that, and then you program that into your little tool. I don't think Text Expander works for the phone anymore. There's another one that I haven't looked up.
It's just a little clunky. You have to put in a
I quit using it.
I
I just use Apple's text replacement features, what they call.
And that's
text
just built right
replacement.
into the
That's the
settings
one that's
area or
built
something.
right in. On my computer, I do use Text Expander.
Yeah. iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music, like the new iZotope Plasma plugin featuring flux saturation, which helps you sculpt the harmonics in your sound, enhancing the excitement and clarity of your tracks and mixes. And Ozone, with its built-in mastering assistant, helps you analyze your mix, suggesting all the settings you need for a professionally mastered result based on your chosen style of music and EQ curve, or reference a specific song if you want. Ozone features sophisticated yet simple modules like clarity and impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting, allowing you to adjust the settings to your taste so it sounds incredible. And with the magic of master rebalance, you can even manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums separately at the mastering stage. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Plasma, Ozone, RX, or any of the fantastic plugins at iZotope.com. So these tools can be really helpful for keeping track of stuff and sending things. So
Yeah, for consistency, and it's like not having to look up the links. These are the things, guys, that are actually the key to getting organized and staying organized. Because you can get organized by spending a weekend just going through all of your files, your email, and unsubscribing and clearing things out and the whole thing. But then you end up right back where you were before if you don't change some of these key things to really make things easier. My therapist thinks that I might have ADHD, so I'm starting to read books about all of this because I'm very organized, but it's because I have to be. And I've figured out a lot of tricks of how to do things quickly and in the moment, because I do not have the patience to sit there for a week, and I'm never going to sit there for a weekend and just clean out my email.
That doesn't
Absolutely
sound like
not.
the greatest
I
weekend.
hate it. I can do it when I'm getting paid for someone else, and but I don't just want to sit there and do tedium. I like creative stuff, so I like figuring out the problem.
we didn't really cover this, Rockstars. I didn't mention this, but Shawn is also an incredible artist.
Oh, thanks.
So he was just showing me you're a potter as well. So you're a creative just like us. So you really understand all this kind of stuff.
I get it. You got to do it right then, and things pile up really easily. So it's not enough to just overhaul your email and get a good filing system. You have to actually change some of the preferences and start learning a few other small tools, and maybe Text Expander is a thing for you, so that you can consistently do it over and over again. Right. So a Text Expander or
that's
another
just the one
app,
that I adopted.
right?
And as you know, and as you pointed out even in the intro, it's like the tools keep changing.
They keep changing. There's another great one out there. I can't even remember what it is. Somebody just told me about it. But it's things like that we need to reduce the friction that is in that process so that we can get to it easier. So it's not about just having a container. It's if we need to use it frequently, we need that container more easily accessible. So if we've got a tool that we want to be able to use and use it frequently, and yet it's far away, then it doesn't matter that it's organized and it's in a spot that you can always find it. You're still not going to use it. You're going to go find something else or just skip it because it's not easy enough. So that's part of really why my job exists, because you can find out everything that I teach you over YouTube in little increments here and there. But we're doing it systematically and figuring out, how do we architect your space around how you think and how your studio works, and each person thinks a little bit differently. And so we've got some principles, but let's adapt it to you. So, for example, when we download a file, so say you sign up for my file organization guide, Chrome is probably just going to download it directly into your downloads folder. And then you need to go find it and do something with it. And are you actually going to do that? The majority of people that I know, their downloads folder is exploding with files. because it's just this dumping ground. Oh, if I need it, I move it somewhere else. Well, no, you really don't. No one does that consistently unless they're, a few people do. Okay. So what we do is we tell Chrome, instead of downloading directly to my downloads folder, ask me where it should go.
Right.
Now, you do that after you've set up your folder structure, so now you have a place for everything. Now you tell Chrome, ask me, so I can save it and name it well in the first place.
I can't tell you the number of times I'm downloading something and I direct it to the folder I want it to go in, and then as I hit the go button, I look at it, I'm like, where did it come up with that name? Like my mouse swiped across some tax form that I did or something, and it just throws that name on a file. And I'm like,
so
this is crazy naming schemes.
This can be really annoying, or it can be the best hack. So when you change that preference to say, ask me where to save something, and it's also asking you what you want to name the file as well.
Yeah.
If you click on another file that's in that folder, it's going to try and name the file whatever you just clicked on.
Right.
And so that's where you're having an issue. Yep. But it's also a hack if you've come up with a naming convention or nomenclature. We'll hit that again. So my expenses, I always name them the same way. It's actually a really long name, but it means that I don't have to create any folders, and I never, ever have a problem finding a receipt that I actually saved. So
tell us, because we're all self-employed,
Yes.
needing to keep track of things and deduct things.
Yes, exactly. So it starts off with the date, because whenever we're looking for a receipt, especially when we're trying to match up an expense with our bookkeeping, it's date, it's the vendor, it's the cost. Those are the three pieces of information that your bookkeeping software already has. Mm-hmm. But there are two other pieces of information that we typically want when we're trying to reconcile our books. That's, what's the category? Is this home office expense? Is this continuing education? Is this marketing and advertising? What is it? So we need to add that piece of information to our naming convention. And then we should also add a description as well, because we may have bought a number of different things for that particular project. And so, it's a, Sony A7C, or Alpha 7C, and then we also got an Apogee Hype mic, and we got a few other things as well. And so that way we can put some of those descriptors in the title if we want to, so we can find exactly what we need without ever having to actually open the file.
So you're on are you out and about somewhere, or are you going through email and
this is right when I download. So right when I get I've got somebody who
made a purchase online or something.
I made a purchase online, or I've just paid a contractor for writing my podcast pitches or something like that. So I get it and I immediately save it, date, and then the next thing is the category. And so that's going to be marketing contractor. And then it's going to be the name of the contractor, and then it's going to be November podcast pitches.
And then what do these look like? So a date is with, day / or how do we do it?
It's always going to be
month.
It's always going to be year first, and it's going to be 2024 / and if it's January, it's going to be 01.
And slash is no problem in naming.
Slash
schemes.
is fine. But Google may actually rename it to semicolon. So I've reverted to using either slashes or dashes or underscores. So 2024 is 01-01. And we always do it that way because when typically our files are sorted by or alphabetically.
Right.
And so if you sort it that way, then it's always organizing your files chronologically.
By the year, followed by the month, followed by the day.
So when we're reconciling, for example, the first thing that we look at is the date. And then we're also looking at the cost. And so I always put the cost at the end of the file name, because on a Mac, it truncates the beginning and the end, or it truncates the middle. So you see the beginning and the end, so you can easily match the date and the cost. And then if you hover over top of the file, then it'll show you the rest of the name. So
I see. So cost is last in there.
I actually have a video on this too.
Very cool.
I think I send this to you in the welcome sequence too.
Oh, great. Great.
So if I mention this and you sign up for this and that email doesn't come through, I'll send it to you.
So he's glancing over at, actually, let me do a screen share and show what you're glancing at here. See if I can pull this off correctly.
It's just a little landing page. When you go to the digitalorganizer.com/RSR, it's going to take you to this page, and you just put in your first name and email address.
So you can see that is, I got 3 screens now in the video studio. But this basically is just, you can just sign up. So not much to look at other than your smiling face.
Right, exactly.
But
so
you just sign up, and then you get this stuff these tips will come in one at a time, so you can absorb it all too.
Yep.
Just cool stuff.
Totally.
Okay, great. Organizing file names is really handy when you're searching. So if you search for a category, it's going to let you find everything that's in that category.
Right. You can search, like if we go back to that thing with Google.
How do you make sure that you're using the same category name and the same vendor name and not accidentally mixing that up?
So that was coming back to that hack of it's frustrating to you when you do it inadvertently, but it's incredible when you're doing it on purpose. So for that contractor that I use for podcast pitches, I always use her for podcast pitches. So I get that every month. So when I just got the last one, I found her previous one. I clicked on that and it named it. So all I had to do was update it from October to November for podcast pitches. Okay, that makes sense. And then I updated the date instead of 10/01 to 11/01 or whatever the date was.
Okay, fair.
And so it's very easy to maintain a naming convention in your folders if you have done all of them. And that's one of the things that I go over when I talk about naming. And it's in the file organization guide. That's where I've got the video linked for the naming convention. And I talk about all this stuff of why you would do it and the how.
Okay, so that's awesome. Now I'm thinking about a scenario where that file that I'm matching the name to might be in a folder over here, but I need this new file to go in a folder over here. Is this where we use things like smart searches, smart folders on the Mac to help us see a list of all the similarly named files, even if we're sending it to a different location?
No, you're overcomplicating it.
That's not unusual for me, dude. That is not unusual.
Well, especially for creative people too. Yeah. It's typical to want to go to, this isn't an obvious solution, so technology must have already solved it. What we can do is just create a shortcut. So I use shortcuts like crazy. It's one of my favorite things about a computer is being able to have something filed away in a specific spot that may be 4 or 5 clicks deep. And I don't have very many of those. But when that happens, like taxes, for example, we're at the end of the year. In January, I'm going to start collecting all my documents. Well, it's for my taxes folder is in Finder, My Drive, Financials, Taxes, 2024 Taxes. So that's 5 double clicks to get there. Kind of annoying. So I put a shortcut.
It just sounds like a typical folder structure that we might choose.
Yeah. And we actually try and create folders structures a little more shallow than that. So you don't have to go as deep, but that gets into archiving strategies. And again, download the guide to get more into that. But I will create a shortcut onto my desktop to that 2024 taxes folder. So that's one way that I use shortcuts. We can also put shortcuts in the sidebar on the left-hand side. And this is whether you're on a PC or Mac. You can drag a folder into the favorites section. And you can also remove it from the favorite section later. So you may be working on a project right now and accessing it frequently. When you put something in the sidebar, wherever you go and find a save dialog, whether you're creating a new Word document or you're downloading a PDF from a website, then that shortcut is going to appear. So we put the folders that we're accessing most frequently in the sidebar.
Right, the left-hand bar of the window on our Mac screen. I do that a lot now, and I love it. So like if I'm working on a project and it's just today I yell at my computer so much. I'm like, how do you not? I was just there.
Yeah.
Why are you showing me way over here?
Yeah.
So then like just taking, today's project folder and drag it to the top of the favorites over on that left sidebar is such a huge time saver, because then I just click there, boom, there's everything in front of me.
And I use shortcuts all the time because I'm a Google Drive user.
Now, would you call that sidebar? Are you referring to that as a shortcut, or is there another?
Yeah. Those are shortcuts in the sidebar.
Okay, fair enough.
So in Google Chrome, I've got tons of shortcuts. And so one of the things that I like to do is I don't actually name half the bookmarks that are in my bookmarks bar, because I know what those icons mean. I know that that's Pinnacle. I know that that's membership.io.
Right.
That's QuickBooks and whatever. So why should I have the name? That means I can fit more on my bookmarks bar. And then I can dedicate more space to things that I actually need to name, which would be different Google Drive folders that I access frequently.
Okay, so this is great. Sorry to interrupt. I get excited. So if I have one that says ChatGPT,
yes,
and it's the logo and then the name, and it's on my bookmarks bar, all I need is the logo. I don't need the name.
Right-click, rename it, and delete that name.
These silly, clever little things. Now, I also do folders, which I think
I do too.
They help. Another thing that I learned a while ago, which I'm sure I've mentioned on the show, particularly for doing these podcast interviews, I realized, I need a lot of tabs open. Yeah, it's a universe of tabs out there, rock stars. And so then it's like, oh boy, it's a lot to close them all down, open them up. And so I learned, you can bookmark a folder of tabs, and then if you go to the bookmark bar, click on a folder, go down, find the folder you want, and then hover over the folder for your interview, and it has 16 tabs. And believe it or not, you have 16 tabs associated with you for this interview. I can right click on that, and it just says open all tabs, and they just roll right out and open all up.
So I bookmark spreadsheets. I actually have two different bookmarks for the same spreadsheet, but different tabs in the spreadsheet, because one is like tracking the sales calls that I have. The other is tracking revenue. And then there are other tabs in that spreadsheet of like forecasting the capacity of my people, for each one, but I don't go to those quite as frequently. So I just have the two for that same spreadsheet, but I just want it really fast to get to.
Because when I think about a spreadsheet, I think they're so useful, but then I'm like, okay, I got to go into Google Drive, then I got to search for that spreadsheet, then open it.
Bookmark it. And then, you can use emojis as well. So both of those, neither of them have titles. One has an emoji for a phone, because those are sales calls that I'm tracking. And then the other one would be just a dollar symbol, so that I know, like, that's my revenue sheet. So whenever I've got, I'm tracking all the revenue in that one.
Well, otherwise the name would, to type in Mo money right next to it, that'd take up like all of your bookmark bar.
Exactly.
Do you feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for more of a simple and straightforward step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all of your struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mixing system from Grammy-winning mix engineer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix in your home studio that will sound great everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. That was absolutely the most helpful and informative block of information and mentoring on the mixing process that I have ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up pro tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session. Look, I'm so confident that this will help you take your mixes to the next level, that if you can't get a killer mix in 30 days, I'll give you a refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the ultimate snare mixing trick. And hopefully I'll see you in the front row of the Grammys.
So yeah, that's just a really great way to do it. And those don't actually match the shortcuts that I have in Finder. Because in Finder, Like I'm typically downloading a receipt and then I have a folder for expenses, but I never access the expenses folder from Google Drive on the web. I'm always doing that on my computer for some reason. So the shortcut's in my sidebar on my Mac, but it's totally different in Chrome because I'm trying to think about workflow.
Yeah.
You know, and when I'm working on pots for pottery, like there's a different set of tools for wet work versus when I'm trimming versus when I'm glazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's different areas of the workshop that I go to for those types of things.
Yeah.
We have to think of our digital spaces the same way, is that, well, what am I constantly doing when I'm opening Finder and accessing? Let me create shortcuts for that. When I'm in my web browser, what am I accessing most frequently? And let me prioritize for that. We don't have to have consistency between the two.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we talk about this all the time in making records in the studio. So it's like you learn to compartmentalize the different stages of it. So like whether it's the song sketching part, okay, now we're like hashing out the song and recording the demo. Okay, now we're going into the studio to record it. Or I'm preparing for a mix. Now I'm sitting down to mix the song, because you got to split up the different parts of the workload. Now that you've mentioned a couple of times, you talk about like leads, calls, and stuff like that, sales calls and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that. When it comes to studio stuff, it's very word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of meeting people, and then it's very important to know how to stay connected with people and follow up and everything. There's a world of CRM apps out there and things like that can be very useful. But let's back up from that for a sec and talk about some of the tips of organizing contacts too, and keeping that kind of information organized. Many of us use iPhones in the creative world.
Yeah.
So we can start there if you want to talk about the other platforms as well. But you meet somebody, hey, oh, it's great, man, let's exchange information.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of ways to do that. It's just like, oh, you just write my number down, text me, and I'll text you back. There's opening up the contacts app and trying to type something in. And when you're waiting on Lidge, the slow typer, to look for his reading glasses, it's like, I'm gonna miss my train, miss my bus. Does anybody take the train and the bus? I don't know, somewhere there.
Not in Nashville, because
not in Nashville so much. And then let's say you even pull that off pretty well. You've exchanged a text message, or you've put somebody's information in your contact on your iPhone, and then a week from now you're like, oh, who was that I met that was doing that?
Yeah.
What do you have any thoughts, any tips for us about organizing contacts?
Yeah.
Just using the built-in stuff?
Yeah. If we're just using the built-in stuff, then I would think about using one of the fields, and fields would just be one of the boxes to put information in.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, the company field or the job title field, you use that, not for the company, maybe.
I'll pull up some live stuff at the same time so I can glance at it.
Yeah. So I often do this where maybe I'm catching somebody's first name. So I ride motorcycles, love riding, and I love meeting people out. And so there are certain spots in the Franklin area and Leapers Fork where I know that there are going to be motorcyclists that I might want to go ride with.
I've heard Middle Tennessee is a great place for motorcycle riding.
Dude, it is good. We've got some great riding. So, I might put, Mark Pikes Peak Ducati, and that way I'm not going to remember Mark's name, but I remember the Pikes Peak because I'm into that bike.
Yeah.
So
where would you put the Pikes Peak?
Usually put it in the last name, because if I didn't catch his last name, I put it in the last name field. If I caught his last name, then I usually put it in the company field.
Yeah, because we have first name, last name, company.
Yep.
Then it goes to phone, email.
So some sort of
pronouns, ringtones, text tone, URL, address, birthday date, related name. What about when you want to remember somebody's wife and kids, or husband and kids?
So there's a specific field for it, but I just want it easy.
There's an add related name too. Maybe that's it.
That's it. It's add the related name.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I just go down into the notes.
Add
just scroll down.
Verification code. Then there's something called add field at the very bottom.
Yeah. So you can add in your own custom field if you wanted to.
Yeah, although I don't see that option here. I see.
So
yeah.
In an ideal world, you're using a CRM. But
let me ask this too. Is there a hack when you're not yet to the CRM stage? Because that is ideal.
Yeah.
But even that's hard to do. It's like onboarding to QuickBooks for the first time.
Well, it is.
In your life.
It's a lot. So,
but when you're just using the contacts app, is there a way to just go find a recent contact? Because I don't think Apple gives you that ability, does it?
They do on the Mac.
On the Mac, you can list it. And if you do them on your phone, because I find that a lot of times
group them.
That it doesn't show up in my Google contacts. It doesn't show up.
It's really frustrating
on the computer even.
Yeah. And so I've got a CRM, and now my stuff doesn't really apply to yours in the same way with like networking and meeting with people. If so, then I do have the CRM, and I do that on my computer, but I grab that person's card. I actually like getting people's card because it's a physical cue for me, and I stick it on my desk so I do something and then I throw it away. But that's why it's just like keep it as simple as possible. Stick it in notes. Put it in the company field or whatever. That way you can just do it consistently, and then just add more of a descriptor. If you're like, if you're worried that you might not remember, then just add more information. What else do you remember? Do you remember colors? Are you a very visual person and they were wearing a green sport coat?
Right.
Then whatever, so-and-so green sport coat. Like what stood out that you think you might remember? And those are some of the cues that you can put in there. But
that's
try
actually
and be
part of the whole memorization, like the memory palace concept.
Yeah.
And in that book, Walking with Einstein, Moonwalking with Einstein, where it's
I haven't read that.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a journalist who covers the memory championships and then decides to go for it and ends up winning the championships a year later or something like that. And so you learn all these things about mnemonic kind of techniques to remember things and to recall it later. It's a practiced skill though. So it's it's fun to learn it at first, and then but it's like training your dog with slow, patient dog walks. You know, if you don't put in the time, you don't have the tool later.
Yeah. So consistency is key. So this is this is the biggest thing with the digital organization stuff is it's got to be consistent. And if you can't be consistent with an ideal technology or whatever, like you may have spent tons and tons of time trying to find the perfect app, but you won't use it because it's not easy enough, you need to ditch it and do something that you will do consistently. So if you're never going to use a CRM or, you're trying to create a consistent practice, do it in the company field. Or do it in the notes field and always just scroll down so that it's natural that I put in the first name, last name. Maybe I'm catching the company name or the band name or something.
Yeah.
But then down at the bottom, I'm going to say, like neo-punk,
Bass
crazy,
player, drummer,
and
whatever.
chick drummer, whatever. So you can stick that stuff in there and just have it consistent kind of every time so that you can just search in the area that you really need it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. And other things little codes to myself that I'll do, which are hard to follow up on later. But like, for example, let's say I'm having a conversation with a possible guest on the show or a possible intern in the studio or something. I wouldn't want to lose that contact at that first connection, but then I would put in like intern ? It's like, that's my code. Like, this was somebody who maybe is going to be an intern, but I don't know if it became one later.
Yes.
Then you have to remember to go remove the question mark after they've been, an amazing assistant for you in the studio for 5 years.
Yeah. This is where having some sort of task manager is better for that sort of thing. Like anything that you're really trying to remember, you got to put that sort of thing in the task manager. And
so what's the task manager?
So that might be Apple's Reminders app. That might be.
I really wanted to use it, and I just felt like it threw me it kicked me out of the airplane without a parachute so many times. I was like, I
was just trying to give you something super easy. I use Asana. So I use reminders if it's like, hey, remind me when I get home to take the trash out. I'm telling Siri to do that or reminding me at a certain time. Those are for kind of inconsequential things, or my Home Depot list for the next time I'm there. It's like, oh man, I keep forgetting to pick up this light bulb for the chandelier. So, but Asana is my main squeeze. Like when it comes to like, if I have to remember to do something, it's got to go in there. If you don't use a task manager yet and you're not ready to do that sort of thing, stick it in your calendar then, and make sure that it's somewhere that you will see, so that you have to have a reliable inbox. And if you're interested in this sort of concept, there's a guy named David Allen who wrote a book called Getting Things Done.
Yeah, that's
and
classic.
So he's got this whole system. We incorporate a lot of these ideas. We don't take it to the nines. Some people are good with that. Ours is just we try and make it as simple as it can be and as robust as it needs to be.
So a takeaway for me from David Allen that was definitely not taking it to the nines, but running with the simplicity of is that idea. If you can do it, if it'll take you like less than a minute, just do it now or something. Yeah, and so
totally.
I've tried to always practice that. But it's hard to do because even the world is so much more fast paced now than it was even when he wrote the book, where it's like a minute could be like 25 different tasks clamoring for attention.
It's true, because we can do things so fast now. And so we just keep operating within the same paradigm of, 8 hours, or I can squeeze in 10 hours today or 12 hours. The amount we're able to accomplish now compared to what we could accomplish 20 years ago is so different. And so I find that even for me, I get in these modes, and I'm dialing back now, because I just started just going more and more and harder, and I don't even know how to quantify how much more I'm getting done compared to what I'm used to. But I still feel like
putting in less time.
Putting in less time. Yeah. It's the
you're a
nature
family
of
guy now. There's
right.
Nothing like there's no motivation like being a family person.
Yeah, but like nature abhors a vacuum. So if you don't decide what you're going to replace that time with, then we're just going to do the next thing. So yeah, I can get that done within a minute or within 5 minutes, and David Allen, whatever. But I've just bounced between a bunch of different things, and the amount of mental energy it takes to just bounce in between different tasks over and over again. It's exhausting, and it's one of the things that just frustrates me most about where we're at with technology right now. And some of it is self-control, and then some of it is just eventually we have to stop and take a look and work with someone. Usually, for me, it's usually I've got to hire someone to sit down with me and just look through my own systems and like, let's take a look at my calendar and how do I need to redo this to really get everything that I want done, because there's so much that we can do. But what's the thing that I value the most? And that is just such an incredible exercise that I can do that for other people all day long, and it's really hard to do for myself.
A tough question to ask ourselves that is, I think, good to keep coming back to is, if you could do anything you want and, money wasn't the object or whatever, what would you be doing?
Yeah. I mean, I like doing this. I would be able to choose how much time I spend with family, ride my motorcycle, make pottery, and do the work that I do. Yeah.
I'd like to do all those things. I mean, I don't want to do exactly what you're doing, but sure. I mean, I want to do those similar things, choose the time frames for my different interests.
Yeah.
But also, because I've had so many times where like it's on the calendar, it's on the schedule, and then you wake up that day and you are just not the right person for that next scheduled event, And so it's like to have the choosing, but also the flexibility to just say, you know what, today's different.
Yeah, I can't do it. I just can't do it today. It sucks when it's there, and like, how do I pivot?
Well,
and I've
sometimes you just
stacked up my
don't
calendar.
sleep. Sometimes you just have crap sleep that night.
Exactly.
For who knows whatever reason.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning and you're like not rested at all.
Yeah, the unexpected party.
But it's all right. You got to put your smiles on and get the podcast studio fired up, man.
There you go.
There's a hilarious episode on Portlandia where he's stuck in a loop. He's stuck in a technology loop, and this is way old school too. But he's got like the clamshell laptop open in front of him, and he's got the earliest iPhone message and then the iPad going, and he's just going back and forth and whatever, and he can't get out of it because it's just nonstop messages and everything. And then she comes in and she just was like, I don't remember what she did. They like smash the computer or break him out of it or something.
Yeah.
He's just caught in a
oh my
tech
gosh,
loop.
I've got to find that. That's
it feels
hilarious.
like that a lot of times, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's, and sometimes I pick up a different device that I can do on my computer, but I just need a break from this screen. Like I have to have some sort of separation. And that's when it's just like, I'm going too hard. Somehow I spun out again.
Yeah.
And just started doing too much, and I've got to think about this better, because I mean, we don't have to work this way. Like there's always a smarter way to do it.
For 15 years, I had a famous MCI console at my studio that originally came from Criteria Studio C in Miami, where it made some of the most iconic Grammy-winning records of the 1970s, and it sounded incredible. When I was ready to upgrade my studio to a full digital mixing setup, I teamed up with Rick Carson at Make Believe Studio, Metric Halo, and Golden Ear producer Bill Simzik to recreate the legendary MCI console as the new MBSI plugin. The MBSI captures the same iconic sound used on multi-million selling records like Hotel California for the Eagles, Saturday Night Fever and Staying Alive for the Bee Gees, I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton, We're an American Band for Grand Funk Railroad, and the soundtrack to Grease, the movie, all for legendary producers like Tom Dowd, Todd Rundgren, and Bill Simzik. The MBSI plugin not only delivers the authentic sound of the original MCI console faithfully, but it also adds new features like a top-notch compressor, overdrive, and a dual EQ filter switch, adding tools that Bill Simzik said he would have loved to have in the original console. Now you too can get that Grammy-winning MCI sound in your home studio. Whether you're recording or mixing, you can experience the sound of Miami 1976 with the MBSI plugin and soak up a little sunshine in your sound at makebelievestudio.com/MBSI. All right, quick question for you, and then I'm done with calendar questions. The voice command on an iPhone to say, create an event for me that does this thing. After years and years, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to say for it to understand me and do the right thing. Or, because I would say like, create event for Monday, 10 a.m. that I'm going to do a podcast interview with Shawn Lemon. And then I look at my phone and it's just like Monday, 10 a.m. event will be the title or something. Do you have any tips for voicing into your phone so that it does the right thing?
Oh my goodness.
Is that too
it's cancel and do it again. It's not the two in the weeds. It's just, what the hell is going on? Like, why is it so bad? We've had Siri for 15 years.
I can't wait for C-3PO to just be kicking around with me, like helping me do the podcast.
I think hopefully Apple Intelligence can figure this out, which is their new, AI, which I haven't even used yet. I'm such a ChatGPT user, but
I'm using ChatGPT.
Hopefully they'll get that under control, because it's I guess with the event thing, it's create an event on Wednesday at 9 a.m. to record a podcast with Shawn. And so it's have the command and then the time frame or whatever kind of deal you've got going on there, variable, and then your description of what you want afterward. Remind me tomorrow at 9 a.m. to cook eggs for Nico. Then it's gonna put it in, and then that goes to the reminders app,
right,
or create an event at this time is gonna put it on your calendar.
I think my fail with the reminders was I just got used to looking at my calendar, and I like to be reminded of things, but I like to also see it when I intentionally go to the place to look for it. And I just wasn't, whatever.
Yeah, I don't even use it for that, because it does it wrong so often. It's reminders of really when I'm talking to my phone and telling it to do something.
Right. I feel like a takeaway for us too is to let go of the idea that somehow all these tech tools are perfectly linked together.
No,
and that you need all
not.
of them at all. You know, you kind of don't. You just need the system that works for you, right?
Keep it as simple as possible, because the thing is, the stuff breaks. And it's like, and automations are not going to solve your problems either. Like, you have to be organized in order to really effectively use automations in the first place, because automations are just saying, I want you to automatically follow this specific process. So if you don't know what the process is, or you do it differently every time, how are you going to automate it? So that's definitely a big part. And then just stop trying to overcomplicate things. I don't use a notes app. Evernote, Notion, anything like that, I don't do it. Because if I'm taking client notes, then I go to the clients folder, and if it's and I find the clients folder, and there's the notes, and I use one note for that client. Now, if they're not a client yet, they're a prospect, then they don't have their own dedicated folder. They're in the prospects folder. If I'm doing a podcast outline.
And this is all in Google Workspace.
This is all in Google Workspace. Yeah, actually, all of them. So I do use Apple Notes, but that's for throwaway information or quick reference material. I just got a case number for AT&T for some problem that I'm having, or whatever. I throw that in there. My neighbors' lists, quick notes, quick notes. That's just
shopping
reference
list
material.
Is really helpful with.
Yeah. If I need to save something, it's a document, and that document should appear with the rest of the things in that context. Right. So
usually for me, it's just a folder.
It's just
There's
a folder.
Shawn Lemon folder for this podcast.
It's a Shawn Lemon folder. So I don't have folders for the different podcasts that I do. I've got one for partnerships and podcasts. And so any of the partnerships and podcasts that are currently active, they're in that folder. If I've done a pre-interview call, we figured out the content that we want to hit, and just like I understand more of the audience and all of that sort of thing. Once I do the podcast, it goes into the archive folder. So all I have to do is find the partnerships and podcasts, and it shows me everything that's upcoming. And then I can go into archive to find older things. Or really, at that point, I'm just searching, chaos to peace with Connie Graff. And so I'm going to put in Connie Graff, and it's going to pull up that outline for the episode. So it makes it really simple, and we find the notes right in context, rather than trying to use this different app and figure out how to make it work with your Google Drive. How do I save what's in here in Google Drive in case I need it? Don't use it in the first place.
Yeah.
Or, and there's some exceptions. I do use an iPad and to write on if I'm at a conference and filling in a PDF, on my iPad. Then I'm going to export it, and then I'm going to throw it into Google Drive. So I don't even need to integrate. I don't integrate that app in Google Drive, because I want to say, this I need, and this I'm going to save, and this I'm going to put in the notes file for that conference.
Well, dude, here, before we go on to the next thing, let's take a live selfie on the podcast. Awesome. You're in that selfie, rock stars, right there.
Cool.
Dude, there's so much to talk about with this stuff too. And a reminder, rock stars, that you can go to thedigitalorganizer.com/RSR.
Yep.
Is that the correct link, right?
That's it.
And that'll be in the link is clickable down here too. So Shawn's got a complete guide that's way more efficient and organized than Lidge jumping around from question to question, which is really fun to do, because I keep thinking of things I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
And you're so great at answering.
Well, that's what's fun about this. We've got guides, and we've got courses and all this stuff if you want to go through it, whatever. But this is the live stuff. This is what we're actually dealing with day in and day out, and how does it actually apply?
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this interview too, please make sure to hit we're saying kick the like button on this one, and subscribe, so that you get more videos from us here at Recording Studio Rockstars. I've got one question to ask you before we go.
Yes.
God, there's so many other great ones I had lined up too.
Maybe we can do another later.
We need to do a 10-hour podcast interview with you. But I like to ask this guest this question of all of our guests on the show. Take the Wayback Machine. Mm-hmm. For us, it's this Wayback Studio machine. For you, well, the studio is the Pottery Studio, too. But you take the Wayback Machine, you go back and find young Shawn, and you say, listen, dude, here's the single most important thing to know to be a rock star of the studio, or a rock star of being organized one day. What advice do you want to go back and give yourself, if you could?
I would say don't try and do it by the book. There are a lot of great examples out there. Liz is an excellent example of being a recording studio rock star, and he's helping to get some great information out there. And he's figured out what's worked for him and for his market and the way he does business and the way he networks. But you might not fit that mold exactly the same way. And when it comes to business and when it comes to life and what we enjoy and trying to make things work, this is not scientific. This is not a template that just works, especially right now in business. It is changing so fast.
Yeah.
These templates are not 100% accurate. Now, there are a lot of great tips and a lot of great concepts and things that you can apply, but you have to stay true to yourself, Shawn, if I'm talking to myself, of what works for you. And in the very beginning, I was trying to write content, and I was trying to write all of these blogs and be a blogger and writer and try and get business that way. When I'm a very charismatic person that enjoys talking to people and making good connections, I should have gotten into a networking group.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, when we were doing our first mastermind, I mean, we were hanging out with John, who's a great blogger. His whole
fantastic,
success beginning started with being great.
And both of us were following my father-in-law's a template of Platform University, and you were doing some of that stuff too. And I had John helping me with stuff, and Richard would edit my posts, and the amount of time, I mean, in tears too, I'm talking about the frustration of spending all day trying to write this freaking blog post and then finally think that it's great, and I give it to someone else to edit it and take a look at it, and it's like, what are you trying to say? You got to go back to the drawing board. And it's like, oh my God, I've spent all day doing this. This is not my forte.
Yeah.
Now, after doing it a lot, I can write a cohesive blog post, and I'm proud that I've finally mastered some of those skills. But I mean, still now I would use ChatGPT to help me to format that and then keep it cohesive, yet still using my voice to go back in and edit it again. But it just helps me to think more linearly.
That's what really helps me too. So a struggle for me, like a blog post, is sitting down to carefully write emails and make sure that it's clear. And because of living in the world where everything's so fast, I enjoy trying to match the pace of the speed of things. Yeah. But my ability to proofread things and word things clearly doesn't keep up with me. And so like, I'll say what I need to say really quickly. And I'm like, oh, just before you hit send,
I want to hit send so fast. Copy and paste it in. Yep.
It does. I don't even have to ask it anymore. I just paste it in, and it just spits back a cleaned up email with a new subject line. And I'm like, that is great.
There we
Copy
go.
it. But then now the next move is like, oh, don't paste and hit send. Paste and then proofread at one time and make sure
it
there's
your
nothing
voice
really
again, because it might
because it changes your your language.
But
like I never sign my emails with toodaloo. Where'd you come up with that?
yeah.
But I mean, like, to me, that's an exciting example of using these future tech tools in a way that helps you, and if it makes you feel better in the process, it lifts you up through it too, and it's better. And if it's clearer, great.
It really is, and it's just I've become a much better communicator through using ChatGPT, because it takes I just spit it out and I try and format as best as possible, and then it lays it out better, and so I get to see this example of my own writing formatted in a better way, that now I'm just writing more clearly and able to organize my thoughts a little bit better around it. And I've been grateful for that teaching experience.
Yeah.
And yet it's still me. It's just I'm using a template, just like, I mean, we're always using templates from all different kinds of places. We're taught it, and it's just we're not good at it, and this is
We teach
And,
templates in Recording Studio Rockstars all the
There you
time,
go.
mixing templates.
Yeah. So,
Or templates for setting up for tracking a band in the studio.
yeah.
So I can't wait for the day where you get to, like, you have some kind of iPad looking thing over there, and it looks like your chat bot with a scribble notepad taking notes and typing or something like that, and you just get to like pace around your studio like as a mad scientist, just riffing ideas off the top of your head like some
You kind of can.
1950s.
Do you have the ChatGPT
idea.
app on your phone?
I do, and I don't have the paid version yet, so I don't get to talk to it endlessly.
Oh, okay.
But I've watched and done that with a friend of mine.
Yeah, I don't really like having
interesting.
conversations with it.
I don't either, because it to me it still reminds me of the answer is like calling the airline to change your ticket, and you're talking to somebody in another part of the world that doesn't speak your language the same. And
Yeah. But I do the thing where you can hit the microphone and it's not using the Siri translation that's in there, but it's using ChatGPT and it's just listening. And I can sit there. I've sat there for 5 minutes and be like, and it doesn't stop. So I just stop and think. And then, well, actually, no, whatever. And it's just all my like horrible pauses and ums and ahs and everything in there. And it does it perfectly every time. And so I can sit there and just talk to it for as long as I need, and then it comes back, and then I can scan it and read it fast. I hate the like, well, Shawn, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like trying to talk back to me in this like friendly, natural way. I'm like, please don't talk to me.
Yeah. Well, very cool, dude. So many things we could talk about. So maybe Rockstars, let us know too. Drop a comment in and let us know if you picked up some good stuff here. And then I will convince Shawn to come all the way back and talk to us again for ages. Or drop in all your questions and we'll do another one of these following up.
Yeah, we can do kind of a pinpointed one specifically answering your questions if you want to.
Yeah. Let the Rockstars know one last time where they can find you and connect with you. I would recommend they probably go here.
Go get the guide, thedigitalorganizer.com/RSR. From that point, you're going to get a few emails introducing us to you, and you'll get all those free resources. And then if you want to stay on for the weekly newsletter, they're all good. But if you don't, unsubscribe, whatever. But then at this point, you've got me in your email, and you can look for digital organization and pop back up. I've got a great quiz too. If you're like, get organized.
Oh yeah,
did you take it?
I took it. It was a blast. Yeah. So Rockstars, if you want to quiz yourself, just on which everybody loves a good quiz.
Totally.
You just go through and answer stuff, and it gives you an organizational score. And then I think it comes through with like, if you didn't like your score in one category, you just click on it, and then it's going to take you right to the stuff that will help you with that particular category of your organization. So cool
so then, it'll show you, what we do in that area, and talking about project management, what we might be able to do for you.
And what if people have specific questions and want to just reach out to you, and they're like, but I need to, can you help me with this thing?
Yeah. So it's either the first or second. I think it's the second email that I send you in kind of like the welcome sequence. It's asking like, what's your greatest challenge?
Right.
So what are you dealing with technologically? And I want to hear that. I actually respond to all of those.
That's great.
And often I get that, and I just record you a video. I like to open up Loom, and I give you a visual and I show you. Or if it's like, hey, I've already got this recorded, then I'll send you a resource for what you need.
That's amazing.
But I love talking to you guys.
And then you also work with clients directly, where like somebody's like, dude, I just want to hire you to get us completely onboarded as a business and get us all going.
Totally.
Okay, great. Very, very cool, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us. Rockstars, thank you for watching. I got a million more questions, but I got to stop asking them.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, dude. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible. Isotope, Native Instruments, Roswell Pro Audio, and Atom Audio. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes. At isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes. These are all things that I highly recommend for your studio because they're going to help you make your best record ever. Also, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is new for us here, and it's a great way for you to help support this show, so I greatly appreciate it. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for watching and for listening. My name is Lid Shaw, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.